When the live stream starts, you will know, Mataji. You should see a pop-up.
It says okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Hare Krishna and welcome to today's Wednesday class. So, Wednesday evening class, we used to have these classes in the temple. It used to be very personal in small groups, and it used to be a wonderful opportunity to ask questions and get a lot of basic knowledge on the Bhagavad Gita, because Wednesday classes are always Bhagavad Gita classes. But now we've gone online, so I hope I can still bring to you the same sweetness, even though I cannot bridge the distance. I'm hoping that the knowledge and the love for the literature that we all have can pass through these airwaves and reach you today. So welcome to everybody who's come to ISKCON of Silicon Valley's Wednesday night lecture. I thank you again for taking the time to join us and participate in what is always nectar, Krishna Katha. It's always going to be Bhagavad Gita classes with me because I'm doing it step by step. So we're going chapter by chapter, and today will be another chapter in the wonderful Bhagavad Gita. We cannot start or do anything without taking the blessings and the auspicious blessings of those who brought us to this point, who are our guides and mentors. And that would be our gurus, our Shiksha Guru, our Diksha Gurus, and the Acharyas in our line, in our parampara. So first, let me express my gratitude to my Shiksha Guru, His Grace Srivas Pandit Prabhu, who took a dull fool like me and decided that she was eligible to hear and absorb this knowledge. To my Diksha Guru, His Grace Vaisheshika Dasadikari, to whom I owe my life and whatever I have received in spirituality. These are the lamps that light my way, and theirs are the instructions that are the antidotes to all the poison of material life that we swallow every single day. Maharaj says, inoculate yourself. Take your shot before you head out in the morning. And one of those things is to chant very regularly, and another is to read the Bhagavad Gita. They are both wonderful inoculations that keep us protected from for lack of a better word, the craziness of the material world. My eternal gratitude to His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founding Acharya of our Krishna consciousness movement, whose sacrifices have given all of us the opportunity to know our real selves and to understand our relationship with the Supreme, starting with this wonderful book, the Bhagavad Gita. Before we start a class, we usually say prayers. They are prayers that are oriented towards the Lord, also towards the Vaishnavas. We take their blessings and we take their permission because we are transferring information. We want it to come out the right way. We want it to be in the right spirit, the mood, and we want to stay humble because we are following in the paths of those great people who went ahead of us. So we'll do our Mangalacharan prayers, and after that we have a small song called Jai Radha Madhav. I'll introduce that to you, and then we will say that, and then we will start a chapter for the day. So let's start with our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauradvise Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम् हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तु ते जयतां सुरतौ पङ्गोर्मम मन्दमतिर्गति मत्सर्वस्य पदाम्बोजो राधा राधामदनमोहनौ दिव्यवृन्दारण्यकल्पद्रुमदा श्रीमद्रत्नाङ्गदसिंहासनस्थौ श्रीमद् राधा शीलगोविन्ददेवौ प्रेष्ट्यालिभिः सेव्यमानौ स्मरामि श्रीमान् रासरसारम्भी वंशीवटततस्थितः कर्षन् वेणुस्वनैर्गोपीनाथ श्रियेस्तु नः तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय 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 श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 रामा राम रामा हरे हरे. So this is a very small song from the Gitavali. I always introduce this song to people because you never know who's new and who's listening in, and it's these are nice snippets about the song that we find out when we read it. Srila Prabhupada was very fond of the song. He sang it, he always sang it before his lectures, and it's become a process for us to do the same. He used to say that this song for him was a picture of Vrindavan. In it, there was everything. There is Srimati Radharani, there is Vrindavan Dham, there is a Govardhan hill, Yashoda, and all the cowherd boys. So it would create this beautiful picture in your mind as he would sing. The explanation of the song goes thus. Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens of Vraja, the holder of the great hill named Govardhan, the beloved son of Mother Yashoda, the delighter of the inhabitants of Vraj, and he wanders in the forests along the banks of the river Yamuna. I'm going to sing this without the kartal because we've always had audio trouble, so I've always kept the loud jarring sounds away from the audio. Next time, I'm told it's been corrected, so next time I'll use the kartal. Please forgive me for not having it with me. Let's do the song. Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari. So that was the song Jai Radha Madhav from the Gitavali. And with that, we will get started with our lecture. So we have been doing the Bhagavad Gita, you and me, for past few classes. We started with the wonderful introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. It took a whole class because the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita was written by Srila Prabhupada to kind of encompass everything that was important, everything that was of value, and kind of give us a window into the world of the Gita. It covers a lot of very important points. And after that, we went on from the introduction to chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and today we are moving on to chapter 4. Before we start, let me again introduce the Bhagavad Gita to those who are new and who'd like a refresh. The Bhagavad Gita, as the name suggests, translated means the song of the Lord. Gita being song, Bhagavat being of the Lord. So Bhagavad Gita is a collection. It's a collection of verses, and it's on a meter. It covers instructions from one to another. It covers instructions that Arjuna, a great warrior, received from his friend Sri Krishna, who was at that time his charioteer. The two of them were out there in the battlefield, at the cusp, at the junction, at the beginning of a great battle, which was happening in the holy land of Kurukshetra. And this was about 5,000 years ago. These verses could be just any song in any book. I mean, sonnets and songs are available everywhere, right? But these two people were not just, they're very special. They're not just any ordinary people. They're not ideas that popped up from a person's mind. They actually existed, and they were very special people, and the circumstance in which these verses, these instructions were given were also very particular. This was a great battle that was happening, and Arjuna was at a point in time when he was extremely distressed, confused. He was not sure what he was going to do. It was a state of confusion and frustration. For him, he needed guidance. So he turns to his very, very dear friend, who was also helping him by, being the charioteer of his chariot. He was managing the horses. He turns to him and he asks him to help him. He says, I'm so confused. Help me, guide me. And Krishna, in turn, being the Supreme Lord, very, very special relationship that Arjuna had with him, he smiles. And then he starts to give him this beautiful Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita goes into 18. It goes into so many chapters, and each of the chapters have certain, because it's like a conversation, in between you'll notice that Arjuna's asking questions and Krishna's elaborating, and then Krishna goes into certain topics, and from the topic, Arjuna asks questions. In our literature, this is a very common theme. A question and answer. It's a discussion, more like a discourse, right? He's transferring information at the same time Arjuna is clarifying as he goes. So these verses, why did this happen at this point in time? Was it only for Arjuna? No, these verses were given for the benefit of humanity at large, so that each and every one of us could then receive the right guidance with which not only we can enrich and refocus our lives, but also bring this solace, hope, peace, and everlasting joy to everybody around us, because that's what Bhagavad Gita brings. So some of the questions we ask when we pick up the book, the Bhagavad Gita, is what is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita? Which is what I explained just now. It's exactly what I explained. Do you need to be qualified to read the Bhagavad Gita? No. You don't really need a qualification. But third question that comes is who can understand it? That qualifies you, because anybody can read the Bhagavad Gita. Anybody in any walk of life, in any stage of life, any need, mental, emotional need, anybody can pick up the Bhagavad Gita, and it has the ability to give you solace. It has the ability to give you guidance. But to understand it, Srila Prabhupada explains that sometimes we need the right mood, right attitude. And Prabhupada says that we have to keep an open mind. When we read anything, if we can just keep an open mind, then we allow that connection, that the switch to turn on and the knowledge to pass. It gives us the opportunity to not block what is coming to us. So certainly we need to be open to the information, and that will help us. Vedic knowledge. So what is the Bhagavad Gita? It's Vedic knowledge. It's passed down through disciplic succession. And a lot of times, understanding Vedic knowledge requires a guide, a proper guide, a guide suited to your temperament, a guide who can make that knowledge, adapt that knowledge to your temperament, your need. And that would be your guru, who understands you, who knows who's best suited to help you connect. And we went on in the introduction to get to the Gita Mahatmya, beautiful 7 verses that are in the Padma Purana, written by Lord Shiva, glorifying the Gita. We covered that in the first class. And it was such a nice collection of verses, appreciating the value and the contribution of that literature. And it went on, introduction wraps up with an introduction to the Parampara, the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya. And who are we? Where do we come from? What is the lineage? Who are our predecessors in this line? And how did the knowledge transfer? So just wanted to touch base. Always very important to know, in the Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 main subject matters. These subject matters and their interactions, how they interact with each other, and what is the result of these interactions. This is the basis of the whole instruction collection. One is Ishvara, the Supreme. The second is the Jiva, you and me. The third is Prakriti, otherwise called Mother Nature. The fourth is Kala, or time. And the fifth is Karma, your actions. So when we look at all these 5 and how they interact, we start to understand who we are and where do we fit in this whole cosmos, in this whole overall situation. What is our place? What is our position? And what is our purpose? These 3 things, place, position, and purpose, very easily understood when we read through. We move to the first chapter. It's setting the scene. It introduces us to what's happening in the Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning. Like I said, there's a battle going on, and there's a scene there, and then we covered all these points. So I won't go too deep into most of it, because then I'll be spending all of today in this. We have a lot in chapter 4 to cover. So it introduces us to Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, their conversation, and then it zooms us like a beautiful movie. It zooms us into the actual Kurukshetra, the battle going on. It brings us to the scene where there's the blowing of the conches and the battle's just beginning. And, and then the mood of each party in the battle. It brings us to that visual of Arjuna coming in on the chariot with Hanuman as his flag, Hanuman on his flag. And he's got these beautiful horses, and he's got Krishna taking him in. And having come there, he comes and he says, well, I'm ready now, but I would like to see who's on the opposite side. I want to see whom I'm fighting. So Krishna, take me in. And they go in, and once he sees, there's confusion and panic, because he sees his own family, his own extended family, his people on the other side. And then he's not quite sure what he's doing there anymore. And there's a whole conversation where Arjuna talks about all the reasons for him not fighting, and all of the problems that will come from him fighting his own family, his own kith and kin. And he's asking in the end, he says, give me one good reason why. Why should I do this? I won't fight. Oh, Krishna, I won't fight. And then in chapter 2, he's asking him, Arjuna says, I'm not fighting. This is it. I need a reason. And Arjuna, and it's a beautiful scene where Krishna smiles. Krishna's smile is the most magnificent thing in the whole world. Imagine being able to see him smile. Even his glance is so purifying, so captivating. Imagine if he got a smile. Krishna smiles softly, and he's asking Arjuna, what is this kashmakash? How did you get so confused, boss? How is everything, how did you get here, Arjuna? And he says sweetly to him, how did these impurities get into you in your thought? How would your thought process get messed up like this? And he's explaining. He says, Arjuna says, no, you see, he gives his explanation. He says, I don't see any benefit. I see no happiness. If everything is tainted with blood, Rudiram, then what is the point? These are all my own family. Everything I take, everything I touch, everything I gain is tainted. And at that point, he says a beautiful thing. He says, I surrender, please instruct me. And by that request, it triggers. He says, because he has surrendered, and he's asking for instruction with a humble, open mind, with an attitude that allows him to absorb knowledge, Krishna says, okay. And he starts giving him the knowledge, not just him, but in the process of giving to him, he gives to all of us the knowledge that will save us. He starts off by explaining, what are you grieving about? What really is death? Are you really killing the people? Or, is it just a changing body? So he's explaining. So in second chapter, it's called Summary of the Gita because it covers so many points that are elaborated as we move forward in the Gita chapter to chapter. So he talks about what is a soul, what is a super soul, right? So who are you and who am I? He talks very, very short, brief coverages of what is death? Do we really die? There are so many approaches to death, Some people say we die and then, some people say we die, we're reborn. Some people say, okay, the soul never dies. Any way you look at it, Arjuna, there's no reason for you not to fight, says Krishna. There is no loss for you. If you fight and win, you get all your fame and riches. If you die, you have a warrior's death. You directly ascend to heaven. For you, there is no loss. So why don't you just fight? Don't get confused thinking you're killing. Do you really think you can kill the soul? So he explains the qualities of the soul. He explains what the nature of a Kshatriya is. The Kshatriya has to fight. So you cannot choose to be something you're not. You're a Kshatriya. This is a rightful, justified fight, and you need to do it. And he talks about how you should do this you should do your duty without considering, the result. You should just do your duty. And the chapter is very long, it goes on for a long time. But when we finish that, it comes to the point in the third chapter where again it opens with a question. And Arjuna is asking, which one is better? Like you're telling me do your duty, you're telling me that, service is good. So it starts off with a question and then it goes on into what is prescribed duty. You're telling me to do my duty. What is the duty? So Krishna explains the concept of sacrifice, how everything is based on sacrifice. It's only by sacrifice that we attain so many things. And the whole system, the whole world works on sacrifice. If you don't sacrifice, then there's nothing else to be attained. The third chapter keeps going on, elaborating about how we should work, but we should work without attachment to the results. And how learned people who have real wisdom, they do not need to keep working anymore. They are not connected with the material world. Everything around them, it doesn't impact them anymore. And yet they keep doing it. So Krishna says, even I follow. I set a good example. I do what a common man is supposed to do because when I do it, everybody does it. And if I don't, people don't understand why it doesn't apply to me. They just see what I do or don't do and follow through. So sometimes the learned must work just to set good examples for those who are in the process of understanding. And Krishna talks about who is the real doer. Do you really think you're the one who's doing it? So all these points are covered in the first half of the third chapter. And the second half of the third chapter covers this concept of lust, understanding how we get attached and connected to the material world. So Arjuna asks another question there. He says, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? And the answer that Krishna says, it's just lust, Arjuna. Lust born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath. It's a beautiful explanation, tough to grasp in the very beginning, but as we keep reading and coming back to this and reading again. So, the Bhagavad Gita is like this beautiful lotus. It unfurls its petals, and with every layer of petals opening, you get more and more understanding of the subject matter. So you must revisit. It's not something you can just read, put it away and say, I got it. Because there's more to it than just information. Lust, born of contact with the material mode of passion, later transferred into wrath. So lust, he talks about what is lust. Lust is not a physical attraction, a need for for sexual interaction. That is not lust. Lust is any desire. A desire to connect with any material thing. And that is actually in the mode of passion, because the mode of passion is all about getting, doing, being. It's all in action oriented towards sensual enjoyments, all your sense pleasures. And when it comes to the mode of passion, lust is explained so beautifully in chapter 3, the second half. He talks about different levels of lust. And Krishna brings it down finally to the point of explaining to Arjuna that you can only control all this if you develop a deliberate spiritual intelligence. You need to be intelligent, but you need to have spiritual intelligence. Material intelligence is of no use in this situation because you first have to understand who you are and what is your situation. Where are you? What kind of world do you live in? What is your interaction with the world around you? And what is your purpose? Why are you here? And when you flow through all this with deliberate spiritual intelligence, you will be able to overcome the challenges and overcome lust. So here we are, chapter 4, transcendental knowledge. So as they've been talking, Arjuna and Krishna, the topic flows, and into the topic we come, transcendental knowledge. So transcendental knowledge is that kind of knowledge that leaders are expected to have. So it starts off with an explanation. So you see, in the picture you have the introductory shloka in chapter 4 that says, Vivashvan Manuve Praha Manu Ikshvakave Pravit. So the first chapter, the shloka that Krishna gives about transfer of knowledge, this is that picture where he gives it to sun god Manu, and then from the sun god it comes to Manu, and then from Manu it goes, and this is being explained by Krishna to Arjuna, that this is how the knowledge is transferred. So it starts off by saying, it's given, I first gave this knowledge to the sun god. And in that point, it explains to us that, this is the knowledge that is given to the leaders of countries, the people who lead. Because without this knowledge, when you have leaders, they don't have any depth. Their functioning is not in the benefit, in the benefit of the population. A leader with the right knowledge is like a father who cares for his children. He can guide them in the right way. So I have copied down the text, and then we'll touch a few of those beautiful, beautiful gems of purports that Srila Prabhupada has put in these. So let's start with the text, because there's a lot of value in reading the texts. I would love to do it in Sanskrit, but then Sanskrit and then English would be overwhelming. I just took the English. Let's go through the text. Let's see what Krishna, hearing the words directly from the mouth of Krishna is of utmost value. It cannot be minimized or reduced in any way. So even though you may feel, oh, Mataji is just reading text, there's a lot to be gained from hearing text. Text 1. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna says, so he starts off here with this statement, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So he's explaining how this knowledge was initially transferred. The sun god is considered the main maintainer, the main god, because he gives light and heat. He takes care of all the other gods, and so he was given this knowledge. The leaders should have this information, this transcendental knowledge, and then it is passed down. So if we see the purport, it says, text 1, the Gita is not therefore a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but it is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial. So this is what I pulled out of I pulled out parts of the purport from Srila Prabhupada, because they were so, they made such good connection with the text, and I wanted to share with you. He says, how do you know that the Gita is not just a book written by somebody sitting somewhere with some thought in his mind? It's being explained right here. This is not the first time the Gita was being transferred. This is a standard manual. It's a manual for life. As I always tell people, you have a manual for a fridge, you have a manual for a TV, an AC, anything you buy a desk, you have a manual to put it up, and then how does it work, and are there any extra appendages? Everybody needs a manual to know how to make something work. And the Gita is our manual for our life. It tells us what kind of person we are, what is our situation, what is our nature, and also tells us what we're doing here and where we need to go. Without that manual, we cannot use this body, this life properly. So Prabhupada says, this is a beautiful example of how this is not just a book somebody sat down somewhere and wrote. It's actually instructions that God already gave once. He gave it to Vivasvan, and Vivasvan again passed it down, because this is not instruction for one person, it's for mankind. And it has to be passed down, it has to be shared. Text 2. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is, appears to be lost. So what happens when we pass things down like a chain? Sometimes the link breaks, and then the next generation cannot receive that knowledge. So when that happens, when that break happens, then the opportunity to pass it again comes, and it still again comes from the Lord. The Lord has to again revive that chain by starting it again. So text 3, he says, that very ancient science of that relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So when it breaks, the Lord makes it his job to send it back again, because he's always in our favor. He wants us to benefit. So he's again sending this instruction so that we can live our lives to the best of our abilities. And he's sending it. And who's qualified to receive? How is he qualifying Arjuna? He says, you are my friend and my devotee. These two qualifications you have. And because of that, you are the right person to receive this knowledge. He says this, and as he says it, Arjuna says, the sun Vivaswan, the sun god Vivaswan, is senior by birth to you. I mean, didn't he come way before you? How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? So it's a very valid question. Any person first opening the book would have this question and say, how do you know something that happened before your time? And Krishna explains, he says, personality of Godhead. It's another way of describing the Supreme, which is Krishna. He says, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. So there's a beautiful way to describe people. You can describe somebody by their name. You can describe somebody by their fame. You can describe somebody by their lineage. And in the Bhagavad Gita, you will see all these beautiful expressions. So in this, he says, subduer of the enemy, chastiser of the enemy. There are different words that are being used. So if you see the Sanskrit, the equivalent in Sanskrit, it's very interesting. These are all names of Arjuna that Krishna uses as we move through the Bhagavad Gita. And it's so nice to see how a person can have multiple names based on its usage. It's not just your birth name as an Arjuna. It's also so many other descriptive names of his qualities, his activities, his lineage. And let's see the purport to see what's being given. So text 2, what did we see in text 2 that the purport is? This science that is passing down in disciplic succession. It says 5,000 years, 5,000 years ago, when this Kurukshetra war was happening, it was detected by the Lord himself that the succession line was broken. And therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita was lost. In the same way, at the present moment, there are many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to disciplic succession. Srila Prabhupada here emphasizes the purpose of disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars. Almost all of them do not accept the Lord, although they make good business on his words. When you don't accept the Lord but use his words, then he says this spirit is demoniac. Because demons don't believe in God, they simply enjoy the property of the Lord. Since there is a great need for an edition of the Gita in English as it was received by the parampara or disciplic succession, this is an attempt at that. This is an attempt made herein to fulfill this great want or need. Bhagavad Gita as it is, if it is accepted as it is a great boon to humanity. But if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculation, this book will be simply a waste of time. So it is the attitude of the reader, the approach with which you orient yourself as you partake of this knowledge that defines its use to you. And that is explained beautifully by Srila Prabhupada in his purport to text 2. In text 4, what did we see in text 4? He asks him, how come you know things that happened before your time? And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, of course, he's God, but he's explaining. Prabhupada explains in the purport. He says, Arjuna puts this question before him in order that Krishna will describe himself without being depicted by the demons. So he's asking Krishna to clarify this in his own words. He doesn't want it not being said so that somebody else can misinterpret it later. So he says, demons are always trying to distort the Lord, represent him for their own needs in their own way. Therefore, Krishna speaking about himself is not only auspicious, it is also a direct validation of that information. To the demons, such explanations by Krishna himself will appear strange because demons always study Krishna from their own standpoint. They are not here to hear what Krishna has to say. They want to know how they perceive what Krishna has to say. But the devotees, they love to hear the Lord talk. If there is something that is stated by the Lord himself, devotees heartily welcome it. They will always worship such authoritative statements because they are eager to know more and more about him. So here it talks about approach. How do you approach this information? In the Vedas also it is said, the Lord, although one without second, manifests himself in innumerable forms. So in the Brahma Samhita, we hear that, how there are so many forms of him. And Prabhupada gives this beautiful example of a Vaidurya stone. Vaidurium is a stone, very valuable stone, which can change color. It changes its color from time to time, but it's still the same stone. And one time you'd see it in a certain shade, the other time you'll see it in a different shade. All these multiple forms of the Lord are also understood to be the same. So at a different point in a text, I noticed Prabhupada talks about this completeness, this wholeness. He says, for people to understand 1 plus 1 is 1, 1 minus 1 is also 1. Because you cannot deplete or remove from the Lord. You can see various forms of him and they will all still be him. Because there are various forms of him doesn't mean that the original him is depleted because of it. And these concepts may seem a little heavy, but they're actually beautiful and simple. It takes time and repeated reading to understand the simplicity and beauty of it. So in shlokas 1 to 5, what did we notice? We understood there is a chain of disciplic succession. What is this chain? It is the passage of knowledge from up to down, from Lord to his devotee to the leaders, from the leaders down to the followers, down to the gentle populace. The information is passed down so it can help everybody. So remember, we talked about ascending and descending knowledge. I think I covered that in one of the previous classes. How, there are two ways of acquiring knowledge. You can acquire knowledge by you yourself working on it, understanding it, and then sending it forward. Experimentation, right? So I tried it, it worked, so this exists. And in that way, we keep going. It's called ascending knowledge. And then there's another one where it's descending. There's already the knowledge. Somebody smart enough, somebody qualified enough has it, and they pass it down so we can receive it. So which would be better? Ascending knowledge, where we, with our limited senses, limited intelligence, limited abilities, try to understand the Supreme, or the Supreme sending us the information, complete package, passing it down to help us understand him. Obviously, it is the descending order that's great, and that descending form is the chain of disciplic succession, descending knowledge. Krishna talks about how when the chain breaks, he takes it as his responsibility to come back and give it again. Here, he's giving it again. He started with verse 1. He's giving it again to Arjuna. Krishna talks about the soul and the super soul, how, he's asking him, how come you know something that happened before you? And he says, because you and I were not the same. I can remember all the lifetimes, all my births, and yours, whereas you can only remember this one lifetime. And that is the difference between you and me. So it's example from chapter 2 where he speaks about the soul and the super soul. And the difference is he's explaining how you are different from me, how you're the soul and I'm the super soul. And in that difference, I know more. I am more aware. Actually, I'm all aware and you are not. And then last, I wanted to share the disciplic succession. So here it is. This is the disciplic succession. And it starts with Krishna, as you can see. So it's nice to know where we come from, where this information comes from. What is that lineage of which we are a part, right? So there at the bottom, number 32, we have A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, from whom we received, our Maharajas received this knowledge, and they are passing it on down to us. And through their mercy, we are passing it on to you. And it starts with Krishna. So Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Vyasa, Madhava, Padmanabha, Narahari, Drahari, Madhava, Akshobhya, Jayatirtha, Jnanasindhu, Dayanidhi, Vidyanidhi, Rajendra, Jayadharma, Purushottama, Brahmanyatirtha, Vyasatirtha, Lakshmipati, Madhavendrapuri, Ishwarapuri, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa Goswami, Rupa Sanatana, then it goes down to Raghunatha, Raghunath Das Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and then Krishna Dasa, Narottama Das, Vishwanath, Baladev, Jagannath, and then it goes down to Bhakti Vinod, Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who is Prabhupada's guru, and then comes down to Prabhupada, from Prabhupada to my guru, and down to me. It's good to know where you come from, right? And one point I wanted to share, like in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's so many names. Sometimes it's frustrating. I used to find it very annoying. Why do I need to know the names of all these conches? What does it matter to me who was fighting in that battle, who was standing where in the periphery? And how does that have anything to do with this transcendental knowledge? Why do we even have this chapter? But it's setting the scene. It's telling you where and what is the cause. And it's said that everything associated with the Lord is valuable because of its association. And in that process, even the names are purifying. They're auspicious and purifying. So we should always have the patience to read through the names. We are told that even when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, that we shouldn't skip through. We should actually do the proper reading because there is benefit to reading those names. So here it is. Evam parampra praptam imam raja shriyo vidu sakalena mahata yogo nashta parantapah. That's the Sanskrit. And he's explaining it. This is the parampara. It broke. I'm putting it back in again. So moving to text 6 to 15. Oh, I hope I've not taken. Okay, we got a little more time. Text 6 to 15. And in that he says, I've put my own topic, mini subtopics, so that we can see what we're covering. Here it's all about knowing me. All about me. Remember those little posters the kids make in school? All about me. This is my father. This is my mother. This is what I like. This is my work. So in a sense, Krishna is explaining, know me. Know me. So he says, text 6. Let's see what's going on. Although I am unborn, my transcendental body never deteriorates. And although I am the Lord of all living creatures, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. So what do we need to know from this? We need to know a few things. One is that, he explains that his body, Prakriti and Swarupa. Prakriti is nature, Swarupa is his own form. He says he does not change form. He doesn't change his body when he appears. And Srila Prabhupada explains this very nicely. He says the conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth and a different kind of body in the next birth. In the material world, the living entity has no fixed body because he's transmigrating from one body to another. But the Lord does not follow these rules. The rules don't apply to the president, only to the people. So he gives our example as we read through. He talks about how the Lord, if he descends, the Lord isn't actually born, he descends. He appears. He comes into the material world with the same original eternal form, with two hands holding a flute. And he does this because of his internal potency. He appears exactly as he appears in the spiritual world. He appears in the same transcendental body and is still the same Lord of the universe. Although it appears that he's taking birth like an ordinary living entity, it is not true. His body, also he explains, does not deteriorate. If he really did take birth, then he should follow the process. He should be born, he should grow, he should stabilize, and then the body should deteriorate, right? But that doesn't happen to Krishna. Prabhupada says, look at his life. When he appears, although it looks like he's taken birth, although his body looks young, he has boyhood and youth, astonishingly, however, if we notice, Krishna never ages beyond youth. He's always a young man. At the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he had many grandchildren at home. Or in other words, he had sufficiently aged by material calculation. Still, he looked just like a young man, 25 years old. We never see a picture of Krishna in old age because he never grows old. He's not like us. Actually, even though he is the oldest, so we describe him, we say he's the youngest, he's also the oldest because he is the origin of creation. He is the past, present, and future, and yet his body and his intelligence, his mind, his body, his intelligence never deteriorates or changes. Therefore, it is clear that in spite of his being in the material world, he is actually unborn. He is eternal, blissful, full of knowledge, and he's changeless in his transcendental body and intelligence. So it says it's just like the sun rising and then disappearing behind the clouds. Even though it's behind the clouds, we have to realize the sun hasn't actually disappeared. So in that way, he says, the Lord is always in his specific form. There's no change to him. So the next thing he's giving is that to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants and to re-establish religion. That is why he appears again and again. These are the reasons. So there's a question, why does he have to appear? There are other people who can do the job for him, yes. But there's also one more reason why he appears. He appears to alleviate the suffering of his devotees. So we have to remember the Lord doesn't just come to kill the miscreants. There are always enough people he can delegate for that. But he comes for his devotees. He comes for a certain purpose. Every time there's a mission for his appearance, and the mission changes. But the intention is always to serve, to connect with and serve his devotees. He's alleviating the suffering of his devotees more than anything else. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So, he says, if you have this knowledge, it will redeem you, it will release you. It is a knowledge that frees you from the bounds of Maya, of illusion. And people who have this knowledge, they are no longer bound, they are not shackled. They will get to come back home, back to me. And he talks about surrender. He talks about how surrender is in different ways. And depending on how you surrender to me, I will respond. This is all about an interaction between you and the Lord. As you give, so shall you receive, is a term that I like when it applies to this. He says, if you've surrendered completely to me, then I will make sure that I take care of you because you are completely surrendered to me. But if you come to me asking for something, then I'll give you what you're asking because that's all you wanted. I'm not going to give you all other things on the side. I'm just going to give you what you want because it's a reciprocative interaction. He says, everyone follows my paths in all respects, O son of Pritha. See another description. He's calling him by his lineage, O son of Pritha. This is again Arjuna. It's another name for Arjuna. So he says, as people surrender unto me, I will give them. But those who know me, those who have this transcendental knowledge, they will fully surrender unto me. They will take the full benefit. They will completely surrender and allow me to help, give them what they need the most. He goes on to explain that men in this world desire success in fruitive activities. Therefore, they worship demigods. He says, what is the purpose? People get confused. He says, the Vedas talk about all these flowery words of the Vedas, describe ways and ways in which you can benefit by worshipping the demigods. So people desire fast, quick answers to their life. They want to make wealth, they want fame, they want problems solved, they want diseases eradicated, whatever they need for themselves. They aim towards that demigod and they worship, and they get it. Shipramhi. Very fast, they will get their results. But you have to understand that these results all come from me. Sarvakarana Karanam is the Lord. He is the cause of all causes. He is the source of all blessings. So even though these people are worshipping demigods, he says, indirectly or directly, everybody worships me. Because even the demigods get their power, their abilities from me. It's still flowing from the same tap. It's just different, you're collecting it from different vessels. So, although I am the creator of this system, you should know I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So this is the 13th text we are on. It says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So after talking about the demigods, how people, they don't always approach him directly. They tend to have this need to approach demigods because their wants are more materialistic and their needs are more urgent. They just want solutions for this lifetime. They're not worried about getting solutions for their transmigration, for their life after life. They don't want to solve that problem. They just want to solve the problems of this life. And those can be done very well if you contact the demigods. So they try to work through that. He says, depending on the three modes, what are the three modes? So we have ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness. So these three modes and the work associated with them, people are attracted to certain modes by their natures. And based on that, he has created the four divisions, varnas and ashramas. He's talking about that. So who created all the varnas and ashramas? They're created by the Lord. And he is the creator, but he is not bound by them. Remember, he creates them, but he's not bound by them. So you have to remember the Lord is separate from material nature. He has nothing to do with material nature, but he does help in the running of it. He does create, he does involve himself, He is the cause of many things, but that does not mean that he is actually in there interacting. There is no work that affects me, obviously, because he's not interacting, he's not in the middle of the action itself. There's no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruit of action. I don't want anything from that action. I don't have any action that connects to me, and none of the results connect to me either. So one who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. See again, so you'll see in this chapter again and again, because the chapter's name is Transcendental Knowledge, Krishna explains, understand what is my transcendental nature. Knowing my transcendental nature, understanding your connection to me, understanding who I am is the first start. Understanding who you are, understanding who I am, understanding our relationship. This is real knowledge. This is the knowledge that will get you out of this circle of birth and death, this entanglement with Maya, and it will release you. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding. Therefore, you should perform your duty following their footsteps. So here he says, so there's some more purpose I put, but I covered most of them. He's talking about how the sun is always in its fixed position, but it's our defects, our inability to recognize that we consider the sun appears and disappears. Same way Krishna's appearance and disappearance is not like our appearance and disappearance. He's always there. He's eternal and blissful, never contaminated. And Srijami, the word Srijami is covered here. He explains the word Srijami, meaning manifest. He manifests himself. He's not born, he doesn't die. So that is the concept of an avatar. And he says, a lot of people claim that, this person's an avatar, this person's an incarnation. Prabhupada says, unless the scriptures refer to it, no one should be accepted as an avatar. And you should remember that it's a fact that the Lord is not just born on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and wherever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks about as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstance. Isn't that wonderful? This is why this is Sanatan Dharma. It encompasses so many variations. I love how Prabhupada explains things holistically. He gives us the bigger picture. He explains Krishna's approach, his attitude, his approach to the world, and how this world functions. He says, the mission is the same. No matter where he appears, he modifies time, place, circumstance. He's able to modify and give them the best he can based on their ability to absorb, their ability to accept. And then the mission is always to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he comes personally, sometimes he sends his representative in the form of his son, his servant, or he himself sometimes will come in a disguised form. The Lord has many agents, quite competent to vanquish demons, but he especially descends to appeal to his devotees. Remember I said that? So that these are the main points from this. This talks about the breakup of society, the 4 varnas and ashramas. So it talks about how, there is the intelligent class of men, the brahmanas. They are in the mode of goodness. Remember the 3 modes of goodness, and a person's nature to that mode defines which class he falls in. So we start with the brahmanas, who are the intelligent class. They are in the mode of goodness. Then we have the vaishyas, the mercantile class. They are in a mix of modes of passion and ignorance, because they're always about buying, selling, profit, loss. So it's all the doing, gaining, benefiting, becoming. So that's in the mode of passion. And then we have the Sudras, or the labor class, situated in the ignorant mode. Between the Brahmanas and the Vaishyas, we have the Kshatriyas. They are the administrative class. They are pure mode of passion. So Brahmanas, mode of goodness; Kshatriyas, mode of passion. Kshatriyas are basically warriors, the leaders, the warriors, the class that rule. And then we have the Vaishyas, the business people, the mercantiles, who are passion and ignorance. And then we have the Sudras, who are in the mode of ignorance. They are labor. They are completely in the mode of ignorance. In spite of these 4 divisions being created, where does the Lord fit in? The Lord does not fit into any of this, because he is the creator. He is not conditioned by his creation. So human society is similar to any animalistic society. But to elevate men from animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created for a systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man towards a certain work is determined by the mode of nature which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life according to the different modes of material nature are described in the 18th chapter. So here, Prabhupada is linking the 18th chapter down to where are we? The 4th chapter. And he's explaining how these modes, so modes come in 18th chapter, these 3 different modes. And he's explaining how all of this affects the varnas. And then as the person grows, he moves from ashramas or stages of life. So varnas are position in the social order. And ashramas are stages in his life. So varna ashrama dharma. So again, he says, just like there is the king is not subjected to the laws, the Lord is also not subjected to his rules. So there are 2 classes of men. Some are full of polluted material things, and some are materially free. Krishna consciousness benefits both. So Prabhupada is explaining, I loved these purports because they bring things down to the brass tacks, the bases, the building blocks, of understanding Krishna consciousness. He says Krishna consciousness is for everyone, right? Didn't I say don't need to be qualified to read it? The knowledge is yours to take. So he says there are 2 classes. Some are fully polluted with material things, and some are materially free. And for them, both of them, Krishna consciousness is beneficial. Those who are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness to gradually cleanse. Following the regulative principles of devotional service, cleansing the mirror of their heart, purifying themselves. And those who are already cleansed can continue to act in the same Krishna consciousness so that they set an example for the others so they may be benefited. They may not need to follow that, but they continue to do so to set a good example. So this is what we've covered. What is the nature of the Lord's body? All this transcendental knowledge about Krishna. Who am I? What kind of body do I have? Am I really born? What is the concept of his manifesting himself, right? Why does he come? What are the varnas and ashramas? And if you understand me, what do you get? You get to go back home, back to Godhead. So text 16 to 24. Gotta go. Text 16 to 24 covers the concept of action and inaction. This chapter I have studied many times, but it's been a blessing to have to take these classes because I have to go back in and make sure that I don't miss anything. I'm taking notes, taking points. And the best part of doing these classes is to recognize the genius that is Srila Prabhupada. And when I first opened the Bhagavad Gita, trust me, I didn't get head or tail of it. I knew it was a very important book, but I couldn't understand it very much. I had many, many years later, I had the opportunity to join a Bhagavad Gita class and attend and learn it chapter by chapter. And even when I gave the exam for that chapter, I was just so grateful. I finished reading the Bhagavad Gita once. It was such a big achievement for me to read it even once. But today, if you ask me and you tell me, oh, let's read a chapter, it's sweet. It's very sweet. And it's a developed taste. It doesn't just come on its own, like everything else. Taste for knowledge is also a developed taste. So if you're having trouble reading the Bhagavad Gita, you're feeling challenged, I do request you stick with it. Stick with the program, and trust me, you'll get to the point where you start relishing. You get a taste, right? And then it becomes very, very sweet. Prabhupada has put so much heart into these purports. It's a real loss if we don't touch the purports, because what can we understand, right? The Acharya is like the mother bird. He's chewing and giving it the information in a simpler, easier to digest form. Krishna is succinct. He's very specific, strict, clean, and to the point. He's throwing it out there. Look at the text. It's 1 sentence. It's 2 sentences. But the Acharyas, they take it out and they stretch it like gum. They're spreading it out. They're pinning it up and letting us look at it in a much better way, right? They're giving it to us in a longer, larger form, but with much more explanation, clarity. It gives us more realization, connecting it to the world around us, bringing it to our level. Text 16. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action, what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. Because it's auspicious to learn things from Krishna. And learning the right things is the most auspicious of all. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what is action, what forbidden action is, and what is inaction. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. So when are you in full knowledge? when you have no more desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a person for whom, a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So here knowledge is treated like a fire. It burns away your reactions. Once you have this knowledge, you have the power to break away the cobwebs, break away the chains, and move forward. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. What does all this mean? So when we look at the purports, I think we've only had, hold on. We've only had one purport that I picked up from this. So he's explaining, Srila Prabhupada explaining for text 18. Let me read all the way down then. Get to text 18. We just covered. Okay. He's saying, a person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. So people who want something, who are doing to receive a material benefit, they're not in Krishna consciousness. It's all about, I did something to get something, right? And then in that, they get bound. Once you do something to get something, karma catches on to you. You're bound and shackled by the laws of karma, action and effect, right? But a person who's acting in Krishna consciousness is free from the bonds. His activities are all performed for whom? For Krishna. Therefore, he doesn't enjoy or suffer from the work he's doing. It's all to benefit the Lord. Consequently, he is the person who's intelligent. Even though he's engaged in all sorts of activities, he is working without reaction. He is karma. The impersonalist ceases all activities. He stops, afraid of the reaction that will come and the stumbling block that it becomes. But the personalist knows rightly his position as a servitor of the Lord. Therefore, he works, he engages himself in the activities, but he does it for Krishna. Therefore, what does he get? He only enjoys transcendental happiness in the discharge of the service. He's not actually getting any benefit. Krishna is giving him this free feeling of joy, transcendental joy, happiness. Those who are engaged in this process are known to be without desire for personal sense gratification, because satisfying the Lord pleases you more than you satisfying yourself. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sorts of reactionary elements of work. So you are immune, which means it cannot touch you. The effect of the work can't touch you because it was never done for yourself. So that is what Krishna is explaining in these verses. So for that person, even though he's acting, he's not acting at all. And yet there are other people who are not acting at all. They're trying to avoid acting, but their purpose is only to serve themselves. By not acting, they are trying to protect themselves, and in that way they are bound. But by acting, we are only serving Krishna and not ourselves, and that by that way we are freed. And this is just one of the ways to understand action and inaction. Action in inaction and inaction in action. So the words are all like the word jugglery, but basically this is the concept. Whom are you working for? Who's benefiting? That decides whether there's karma in it or not. And even by not doing, if you are benefiting, then that karma connects. But if you're doing it for Krishna, you're doing and not doing, both of it doesn't affect you. Because by doing, you're doing for Krishna. By not doing something also, it's for Krishna that you're not doing. So both ways, the effect, the result goes to Krishna. And what do you get? What's your benefit? Because you have transcendental knowledge and you know to do it in the benefit of the Lord, because you know your position, you benefit from transcendental happiness. Such a man, understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. He who is satisfied with gain that comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. Different ways of explaining the same concept. There are different parts of that concept. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature, who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge, merges entirely into transcendence. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Because you're working for a spiritual purpose, and everything you're offering also becomes spiritual in the process. So this was the concept of this specific part. So what did we cover with these shlokas? 16 to 24. So I thought, because you've been seeing so much writing, I thought this might be entertaining. So this is action. I'm up to it. I'm doing something. I'm always doing something. But it's getting me entangled in karma. So, action and inaction. When to do which? When should you be in action? And when should you choose to be in action? And how much is enough? How much action should you do? How much inaction? And what is the result? All this is defined by the purpose of the action and inaction. Who's benefiting, right? He who is satisfied with gain that comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled. This is from text 22. What does that mean? Basically means if it's not for me, how does it affect me? Right? If it's not for me, I can't get entangled because shitoshna sukha dukkha. It doesn't matter if it's bringing happiness or sadness, if it brings more money, less money, it's effective, ineffective. I never did it for me. I did it for the Lord. So then I am disconnected with the results, and therefore it does not have an impact on me. So I am satisfied whether I gain or I lose. And then I become free from the dualities of life, because in material world, there are always dualities. They say the win or loss, gain or loss, it's a success or failure. And in these dualities, we get disengaged. The next portion is 25 to 33. We have two more sets. 25 to 33 talks all about sacrifice. It's beautiful because when I looked into the purports, when I read this 25 to 33, it's all about these concepts of sacrifice and how, different types of pranayama and yoga, because I didn't realize all of them are sacrifice. There's some form of sacrifice. But when we read it, it feels overwhelming. Prabhupada breaks it down in such beautiful ways. Text 25. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. Some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Some sacrifice the hearing and the senses in the fire of mental control. So in the fire, when we say in the fire, it basically means where we're offering it. So we are with mental control, we are offering the hearing and the senses. With the focus of what do we call Supreme Brahman. So in the focus of giving away to the Lord, they worship the demigods by offering sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. It's being given to the Lord himself. And then others who are invested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses, they offer the functions of the senses, like the life airs, into the fire of the controlled mind. They control their life airs. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing possessions, and others by severe austerities, by practicing yoga, eightfold yoga, or by studying the Vedas. All of this is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purports. I did take some for you. So we can take a look at that. The yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred here. In the Yoga Sutra, the soul is called the Pratyagatma and Paragatma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it's Paragatma. And the moment it becomes detached, it's called Pratyag Atma. So according to this yoga system, our goal is to create Pratyag Atma. Pratyag Atma is one that is withdrawn from all activities of matter. When we do sacrifices, there are different types of sacrifices. A person can sacrifice their possessions. How can they do it? By giving to charity. In the mercantile class in India, we offer dan. We give it to charitable institutions like dharmshalas, annakshetra, atiti sala, anathalaya, vidyapita. So these are ways to give away. What are we giving away? Our possessions. In other countries also, we do it. Charitable foundations for distributing food, education, medical treatment. They are all called Dravya Maya Yajna. This type of sacrifice. It's Dravya Maya Yajna. There are others who do a different kind of sacrifice. They do it for higher elevation, going to higher planets. And for that, they do austerities. These processes require severe vows, living their life under rigid rules, like the Chaturmasya vow. Remember? So you don't shave for 4 months during the year, you don't eat certain foods, do not eat twice in a day. All these are strict adherences to certain processes, the purpose of which is to achieve higher, to get to the higher planets and all that. So there are still others who do different kind of process, which is yoga. They follow the Patanjali system. So he's talking about sacrifice. Sacrifice is not just not doing something or choosing not to eat something. There's so many ways to sacrifice. Giving away something you have, choosing to control a certain way of life, choosing to control even your air that you breathe. So these are all sacrifices. Tapomaya yajna is sacrificing the comforts of life. Others do the Patanjali system, Hatha or Ashtanga yoga. Some they sacrifice by going to places of pilgrimage. This is Yoga Yajna, sacrifice for creating perfection in the material world. Others, they like to study. They study Vedic literature, Upanishads, Vedanta Sutras, Sankhya philosophy. All of these are Swadhyaya Yajna, engagement in sacrifice of studies. All of these are different types of sacrifices. All these yogis engage in it to seek a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness, however, is different because it is direct service to the Supreme. It cannot be attained by any of these above mentioned sacrifices and can only be attained by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotees. Prabhupada is setting you up for the next part. He's saying it can only be attained with Lord's mercy and from bona fide devotees, and he'll take you down to the next part where he talks about Guru. So there he's setting you up. The system of yoga for controlling the breath. Now he's talking about that. That is pranayam. In the beginning, it's practiced in Hatha Yoga with postures. All of these processes, they control the senses and they help you advance in spiritual realization. The control of the air, and you reverse the direction of the air, it increases your duration of life by being able to do that. And then it helps you perfect your spiritual realization. The intelligent yogi is interested in attaining perfection in one life and not waiting for many lifetimes. So he practices all this. But a Krishna conscious person is always situated in transcendental loving service. Automatically, he becomes the controller of the senses. His senses engaged in the service of the Lord cannot be used in any other purpose. So in the end of his life, he naturally transfers to the transcendental plane of Krishna. Consequently, he has no need to extend his longevity by doing this Hatha Yoga and Pranayama and all these processes. Isn't that so simple? Prabhupada says, don't waste your time. You're going home if you just follow the simple, clean process. So here it is, the rest of the text, let me just finish it. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others curtail the eating process. They offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. So if we had read just this, how much could we understand? But when I read you the purport, isn't it so much simpler? That's the beauty of having a guide. These are transcendental literatures need guides. We can't just understand it on our own. See how Prabhupada breaks it down for us. Text 30. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions and have tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices. They advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere, not to the Lord, eternal atmosphere. Oh, best to the Kuru, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? See, another name for Arjuna. Oh, best of the Kuru, describes his lineage and also his prowess. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas. Remember, the Vedas always give you all these options, very tasty, fruitful activities. All of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Understanding, knowledge is what Krishna is giving. O chastiser of the enemy, another name for Arjuna. The sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. So he's giving you hierarchy. Give away your possessions, it's good. But if you sacrifice with knowledge, even better. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. What do we want to get from sacrifice? What we want is transcendental knowledge. So what have we learned? In this, we're going to the last part now. What have we learned from 25 to 33? We learned all about sacrifice. So, what all can we sacrifice? We can sacrifice our money, our possessions, we can sacrifice our eating, our bodily, our daily activities can be sacrificed. We can sacrifice by absorbing, by undertaking knowledge. We can sacrifice by controlling the air that we breathe, doing pranayam, physically controlling the body. So all kinds of sacrifices. How all can we sacrifice? What all can we sacrifice? How all can we sacrifice? Why should we sacrifice? Because there is no other way. Everything is based on acts of sacrifice. But what is the ultimate purpose of sacrifice? Sacrifice should get us transcendental knowledge. Otherwise, none of this is of any use. Best sacrifice, best way to live, however, is not to do all these, but to live your life Krishna conscious. Because when you live in the service of the Lord, everything comes under control. All the benefits of sacrifice are anyway reaped, because if you live that way, when you die, when you leave this world, you will automatically be transferred to the eternal abode. The last part, text 34 to 42, talks about Guru and transcendental knowledge. Text 34 is a really important text. I really felt that it was important. Just try to learn. Tatvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. It talks about the value of having a guru. Just try to learn the truth. So Krishna says, all this is here, all this is here. And then he tells Arjuna, he's not telling Arjuna, he's telling us, because Arjuna has his guru. He's standing in front of him and he's guiding him. But what about us? So Krishna is telling us when he's telling him this, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. Two things. You must ask inquiry. What mood do we ask the inquiry? Submissive. What do you know? Do you really have the right answers? Is not the approach we give our guru, right? So very submissive, humble. We acknowledge his position and request his mercy. We ask for his mercy by inquiring from him submissively and by rendering service unto him. Serving Guru melts his heart. A pure person like a Guru whose heart melts, you'll get the rose apple juice of his wonderful, wonderful mercy. And with that, much knowledge can be absorbed. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. One who has realized the truth can automatically give it to you. So we should try our best to win him over, in the sense, by our attitude and our approach to receive his mercy. It's not a material transaction here. It's an approach. It's all about the approach. He has something of value. He's more than happy to give. But what pleases him most is our attitude and our approach. Very important to remember. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you as a disciple, having received this knowledge from your master, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over oceans of misery. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge, who subdues his senses, is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. But ignorant and faithless people who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. I think we should just pick that up, print it up, and put it on our walls to keep reminding us it's faith that brings us home. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Text 41. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, obviously because you're not doing it for yourself, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, because you have Guru and he is guiding you. He is situated factually in the self. He is positioned where he needs to be. Thus, he is not bound by the reactions of work. O conqueror of riches, look at that. His prowess. It's again another name for Arjuna, but this time he's describing his prowess, his abilities. Last one. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Dridena Chitva. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Isn't that a wonderful chapter? I really feel like clapping for Prabhupada. Such a pretty chapter. Bhagavan, of course, is Bhagavan, amazingly capable. Nobody else could say it like he does. But for Prabhupada to break it down for us is the best. So let's see what the purports are for this chapter. Out of many standard and authoritative revealed scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita is the best. Persons who are almost like animals, having no faith or knowledge, and some, even though they have knowledge or can cite passages, have no faith. For them, it doesn't work, right? Even though others may have faith in scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, they don't believe or worship in God. So some have knowledge but no faith. Some they have faith in the Gita, but they don't believe in Krishna. Such persons cannot have any standing in Krishna consciousness. You don't qualify if you behave like that. They fall down. Out of all the above mentioned persons, those who have no faith and are always doubtful don't make any progress. They make no progress at all. Men without faith in God and His revealed word find no good in this world nor in the next. For them, there is no happiness whatsoever. One should therefore follow the principles of revealed scriptures with faith and thereby be raised to the platform of knowledge. Only this knowledge will help one become promoted to the transcendental platform of spiritual understanding. In other words, doubtful people have no status whatsoever in spiritual emancipation. You do not get to step on the escalator to go back home. One should follow the footsteps of the great acharyas who are in the disciplic succession and thereby attain success. The yoga system instructed. So this is the wrap-up that Srila Prabhupada gave. Why am I using Srila Prabhupada? Whom else will I use? When you have the master of answers, why would I use something else, right? I can only express it in my limited ability. But look at Srila Prabhupada. When we have him, I have no shame in pulling from his purports and loading my presentations with so many purports and explanations from him because he is the master of explanations. Nobody can do it like him. And every time I read it, I learn something more. So does the other person on the other side, right? The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatan Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. This yoga has two divisions of sacrificial action. One is sacrifice of material possessions, other is knowledge of self. So remember, sacrifice has two divisions. This yoga system has one is a sacrifice. So you give up. And the other is collect, learn knowledge, which is a pure spiritual activity because it's knowledge of self. If sacrificing one's possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, if the sacrifice is not meant for spiritual objective, then it doesn't work. When we come to spiritual activities, we find that they are also divided into two. So first he explains sacrifice and knowledge, how we sacrifice to obtain transcendental knowledge. Then he talks about spiritual activities. That itself breaks into two: understanding one's own constitutional position and understanding the truth regarding the Supreme. So in that knowledge, what do we need? Know yourself, know the Lord, know your connection, right? That's most important. Bhagavad Gita keeps explaining this. For him, there is no difficulty once he gets this in obtaining perfect knowledge of self as part and parcel of the Lord. Once you understand who you are, once you understand who the Lord is, then the connection is very easy to understand. That's what Prabhupada is saying. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is awakened by different types of sacrifice to demigods, to Brahman, sacrifice in celibacy, in household life, controlling the senses, practicing mystic yoga, penance, and giving up material possessions, studying the Vedas, in partaking of social institution of Varnashrama Dharma. All of this is sacrifice, and all of them are based on regulated action. But within all these sacrifices, the most important factor is self-realization. So today you sat with me and took in this 1.5 hours of class. You've also done a sacrifice because you sacrificed in understanding the Vedas. And that sacrifice takes us a little step forward, a little bit more forward in our Krishna consciousness. Because for us, this sacrifice was done because we love Krishna. We want to know more about him. We want to hear more about what he has to say. And because of that, it all becomes transcendental. It all adds. So it was wonderful having all of you here with me today. And we've been doing this over time. And it's been a real treat to get to see all of you again. I hope we'll keep, Krishna willing, we will get to continue, keep going through the chapters till we wrap it all up. And we can, if Krishna allows us, we will wrap it all up, get to the last chapter. And, we'll be able to say Sarvadharman Parityajya, hopefully. And if those 18 chapters happen, I am more blessed than anybody else. So let's hope so. Chapter 4 is done. So Guru and transcendental knowledge, find your guiding light. Everybody needs to find their guiding light because that person can make Krishna consciousness happen for you. It talks about perfect knowledge. It's like a fire. It burns to all your pious and impious. It gets you out of the connections. It gets you out of the clutches of Maya and up to the spiritual world. It talks about the value of learning from a guru, how he's an unadulterated version of the knowledge that you need to receive. And it's always for proper self-realization, the value of Guru. So we'll stop here with that. Next time we can learn more about Krishna consciousness and its applications in life when we go to Karma Yoga, which is chapter 5. And then I was supposed to, I usually note down 1 or 2 questions to ask you. But if that was a question I wanted to ask you, then I would leave you with this question. To spend the coming week noticing all these sacrifices that people are making, recognizing these sacrifices and recognizing how the world works on sacrifice. Everybody's sacrificing something for something. And Krishna conscious people are sacrificing it for Krishna. And thereby they get out of this loop, whereas everybody else is sacrificing for themselves to get something or to avoid getting something. And in that way, they get more and more entrapped. So it's a nice opportunity to observe, action and inaction and inaction in action. That is also something you can look at and see if the way we work in this world applies to that concept, because it should. In Krishna consciousness, you will notice many times. So thank you for your patience and accommodation. Please forgive me if there are any mistakes. I'm sure there must have been many mistakes. I beg forgiveness. I am perpetually a student in training. Please consider if there was anything useful, anything you could take away, that these are the blessings and mercy of my Guru Maharaj and my Shiksha Guru, and it's the parampara that passes it on to you. If I could not give you anything of value, then I pray that at least I left you with a desire to open the Bhagavad Gita and read. If my enthusiasm, a little bit, a drop of my enthusiasm passed on, I would consider this service success. Thank you so much for your patience and your hearing. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you,
Krishna
Manjula
Prabhu.
ji. Very nice lecture, very nice presentation. You compiled all the 4 chapters and you gave prelude to all the previous 3 chapters. That was also excellent.
I felt like because there was a huge gap from the last time I did a class and now, because
Right.
sometimes it doesn't fit. So I thought, and it's also good, Maharaj, it's good to leave lectures complete. It allows any person who picks it up to get full value. So I thought it was good. It's great to brush up, no, Prabhu?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that is right. When I was talking about the action and inaction, I was reminded sometime back when I read Mahabharata. There was there's certain statements. Mahabharata is huge, right? 100,000 verses. So there are some statements which cast my attention, and this was very, very much similar to what is said in the inaction and action.
mhm.
The statement was that when any work we do, it involves a lot of exertion. Means I think they were actually trying to say, because these are all translated in very old English. They said they meant that if you're too attached, right, you will be like you have a lot of passion in
Yes,
in
mode of passion.
what
Yes.
you do. And then it said that when you do that kind of work, then it will cause attachment and it will be the source of pain and pleasure. But any work you do which doesn't involve a lot of exertion, right? You don't do it with a lot of attachment, basically, right? Then that bears the real fruit. So they were actually talking about, the kind of work where uh, you are doing it for someone else or doing it for the Supreme, basically. Then
I find that sentence sometimes very confusing, because when you tell somebody that who's not uh, in the process, who doesn't see it, realize it, for them, right, when they first told me, like, don't do it with attachment. We're always told, don't do it with attachment. But I used to wonder, what is work if it's not done with a passion? You should want to do it, right? And Krishna consciousness is all about passion. Laulyam api ekam moolam. Your desire, you should have this deep greed, you should have this desire, you should want to do it. And then how is it detached? So sometimes I wonder that detachment basically it's actually a juxtaposition in the wrong place, because the detachment means detachment from your personal satisfaction to be very attached to the satisfaction of the Lord. So the same enthusiasm that I put in collecting money for myself becomes my enthusiasm in building a temple for the Lord, right? So then that mode of passion transcends. It's used, even that becomes used in service of the Lord, then it disconnects you. You get detached from the result.
Yeah. So that
Detachment from
statement
the
was
result.
in the Mahabharata is not so much a bhakti literature, right? Mahabharata is more like
No, that
Bhagavad Gita is more
instruction. I
like
was
a
talking about that
liberation.
instruction, how it's so difficult for us to understand that instruction sometimes.
Yeah, so
What do
it,
you
it
mean?
is it is a literature for liberation, basically.
Hmm.
I think like Bhagavad Gita also to a certain extent is a literature of, because that's why the last chapter is, the renunciation, basically. right? The last chapter in Bhagavad Gita is about renunciation. But there is bhakti embedded there. There is bhakti embedded there. Um, and so we have to take that statement of Mahabharata from that aspect, basically. So it is actually directed towards people who are moving towards the path of renunciation.
It reminds me of how Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is very simple.
Mm.
And it reminds me of how Gurudev, when he does his lectures, Maharaj, his explanations are so simple. So once I asked him, Gurudev, how do you make it so simple?
Mm.
It looks like you're taking no effort at all. Like it's just
Mm.
so simple. And he said, takes a long time.
Yeah.
As I read the Gita more and more, I start to understand where, I read the whole fourth chapter and I've presented the whole chapter and I look at it and say, so simple. It's not that simple. It's so simple because you read it for a long time. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, so when Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is simple, it's because he's already understood the various facets. So for him, his overall understanding is complete. But for us, because we are still gathering, it's like it doesn't complete. We still have different portions of information that don't come together to complete the picture. Once we are able to get the complete picture, then it becomes simple. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
explaining it well.
Yes, you are right, Mataji. Actually, the person who is extremely attached, right, to his fruits, for him to say that, hey, you are doing this work for someone else, doesn't jive, basically, right? And then he comes up with all kinds of arguments, basically. Why he has to do it for Supreme Lord? He has everything. Why have to do it from him? Then we give the counter argument that you are actually not giving it to him, you are doing it for your own purification. When you give donation, or when you are, making garland, or when you are making bhoga for the Lord, you are not doing that for the Lord. You are actually doing it for your own purification, because he doesn't need. He has many,
Yes.
servants, pure devotees serving him.
You giving, your $100 is not going to build his wealth,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? Yeah, very true. Very true. It brings us back to this concept of, how we said, right, with service, it's purifying. So I really liked your point. It brings us back to this understanding. If you have a transcendental knowledge, if you have a deeper understanding of the fundamentals, then every process becomes simple and easy.
Yeah.
When we serve in the temple, when we do our services, right? Like you just said, flower making, they're all sacrifice. The understanding of the basic concept of sacrifice that Krishna is explaining in the Bhagavad Gita, how sacrifice makes the world work.
Yeah.
He started off with, in the beginning, he created yajna, he created people, he created the stuff, he created demigods, and he sent you down with the items of sacrifice so that you can perform the sacrifice, please the demigods, and receive the results. He's created a cycle.
The
That
third
cycle
chapter.
only works with sacrifice, right?
Third chapter. Yeah.
So essentially, you have to sacrifice even for you to survive in the material world.
Yeah.
If you do it for Krishna, you get out.
Yes. Then you purify yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, you finally get out of that wheel. Otherwise, you do it for yourself, you are still in that
Yeah.
wheel, rat race.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Prabhu. Such a wonder to have you around.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Panchakalpatarubhyashta kripa
मंजुला कांता माता जी की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, बहुत
Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prabhu. Always.
Thank you everyone for taking time from your busy lives and joining this Wednesday class in YouTube and Facebook. Thank you, Jay. We'll meet again in this online only class next week.
Yes. Hare Krishna.